Hey there guys, Nordic Warrior here, back with another video. So today we're going to be doing something a bit different on the channel. Those of you who follow my other channel, where I make gaming related content, will know that at the back end of last year, I made a list of my top 100 personal favourite video games of all time, and I really enjoyed making that video. I figured that since I do movie reviews here from time to time, why not do something similar, but instead of video games, talk about my favourite movies. So before I get started, I want to make it perfectly clear that this is my personal list, meaning my only criteria is what movies I personally enjoy the most. So yeah, here it is, my top 20 favourite movies of all time. Let's get started. Coming in at number 20, just making it on the list, we have Dog Soldiers, released in 2002. So right off the bat, Dog Soldiers is, in my personal opinion, one of the most underrated survival horror films slash creature features of all time. And it's a movie with an extremely simple premise. A group of rookie soldiers are in the Highlands of Scotland on what they believe to be a simple training exercise before they get attacked and hunted down by a pack of werewolves. It's a movie that has a low budget, and in a way that works to its advantage, since the special effects in the movie are almost entirely practical. And this, if done right, can make movies timeless. The action scenes are incredible, the acting is amazing, the dialogue and the camaraderie between the soldiers is utterly hilarious, and at times satirical. But it also comes across as genuine, and never feels like a straight up parody. It's one of them movies that perfectly blends horror, action and comedy in a way that very few movies manage to do. It's an underrated classic. Coming in at number 19, we have Terminator 2 Judgment Day. So this is kind of an obvious generic pick. It's one of them movies that's very well known and is generally regarded as a classic. And you've probably seen it on many lists just like this one. It's generally regarded as one of the best sci-fi action movies of all time. And it's not hard to see why. It had a great story, groundbreaking special effects for the time, amazing acting, and it's just an absolute blast to watch. While it's not as great as the original Terminator in my opinion, I know that that's subjective, it still makes it on the list. Coming in at number 18 we have The Incredibles. That might surprise some of you considering how generally critical I am of superhero films. But The Incredibles is no ordinary superhero movie. It's in many ways a beautifully executed, beautifully animated, character-driven drama about a homogeneous yet slightly dysfunctional family with a superhero theme. It's a movie that is incredibly based, incredibly relatable, and an absolute blast to watch, with, in my personal opinion, one of the best and most interesting plots, as well as best and most interesting villains in cinematic history. A true classic and one of the best animated movies ever made in my personal opinion. Coming in at number 17 we have The Predator. Again, this is another well-known, certified classic, and a bit of a generic pick. And in my opinion, its reputation is well deserved. This is one of the most epic, high-testosterone action movies you'll ever see. It's basically the 80s in its full glory. It stars a whole host of 80s badass action heroes such as Arnold, Carl Weathers and Jesse Ventura, and they just ooze machismo. And it's the kind of action film that they don't make today, unapologetically macho. In addition to that, it also works as a tense, survival horror, creature feature type of movie, kind of like Dog Soldiers. I mean, I don't really need to say much more about Predator, since it's a well-known classic. I'm sure you guys have all seen it, and those of you that haven't, well, you should go and watch it, because it's pretty epic. Coming in at number 16, we have Planes, Trains and Automobiles. What can I say about this movie that you don't probably already know? One of the best and most heartwarming comedies ever made. This is one of them films that could have easily turned into a disaster had it not starred the two perfect actors for the role, Steve Martin and John Candy, who have some of the most incredible on-screen chemistry I have ever seen in a movie. They really are great together and really funny. Martin is this uptight, stressed out, overworked businessman who is just desperately trying to get home to his family for Thanksgiving, and everything just goes wrong for him simultaneously. Meanwhile, he's paired up with John Candy, who is the complete opposite of him, a guy who is just sort of a insufferable optimist and an incredibly charming and charismatic salesman. And despite spending a large chunk of the film trying to ditch him, fate just keeps bringing them together, and the more they get to know each other, the more Steve Martin's character starts to realise how neglectful he's been of his family. He sort of becomes softer of heart the longer the film goes on, and he also starts to realise that John Candy is a lot more damaged and a lot less secure than he initially thought, and that on some level he was just lonely and looking for a friend. There's also a twist ending that I won't spoil here, but it's one of those ones where it makes viewing the movie a second time so much different, if you know what I mean. It's one of the very few movies of its kind that genuinely moved me, and not in a forced or contrived way. It's a very wholesome movie, and if truth be told, it's the kind of movie that would probably never get made today. And on top of everything, it's just hilarious. The movie is so funny. Man, I should really review this one day, but I digress. Coming in at number 15, we have God's Not Dead. This is a movie that resonates with me on a personal level. A movie about a born-again Christian college student who is studying law and is forced to take a philosophy class as part of the curriculum. He ends up with a college professor, played excellently by Kevin Sorbo, who is probably the most unapologetically based actor of all time, at least in recent history. And he tried to force the student to sign a piece of paper renouncing any notion of the existence of God. When he refuses, he's challenged by his teacher to defend the philosophy he holds in front of the entire class. It's a movie that, like I said, resonates with me on a personal level, as I've experienced similar things, and my faith means everything to me, and I think the movie was extremely well written and well acted, as well as very thought-provoking. With it being a Christian movie, it's of course hated by most mainstream critics, and if truth be told, that only makes me like it even more than I already do. It's a great movie in my personal opinion. Coming in at number 14, we have one of the first movies I ever watched, Toy Story. This is a childhood favourite of mine. It's a groundbreaking, innovative, and utterly hilarious satirical comedy based on living sentient toys. While the premise may seem silly and weird, the execution of it couldn't have been better in my personal opinion. The movie is just so funny, and pretty much all the jokes land. It's one of them movies that's just so quotable, and perfect for generating some hilarious memes. The animation was beautiful for 1995, which was the year after I was born. Man, I feel old, but I digress. And the characters, particularly Woody and Buzz, are incredible. This is an amazing movie, and another true timeless classic. Coming in at number 13, we have The Terminator. Again, this is another pretty obvious generic pick. This movie is very well known, and it's generally regarded as a classic. I don't really need to say much more about it. It's one of the most fast-paced and well-made action films of all time, with great special effects, great acting and a great story, a true timeless classic. It also works as sort of an 80s sci-fi horror movie, and it's just so tense. Arnold gives probably the best performance of his career, in my opinion. I genuinely bought him as an emotionless cyborg on an assassination mission. Linda Hamilton was also fantastic as Sarah Connor too. Incredible movie. Coming in at number 12, we have the movie Kickboxer, starring Jean-Claude Van Damme. Again, this is one that of course is very popular. One of the best martial arts films of the 80s in my opinion, and that really is saying something. It's one of them movies that, while formulaic and a bit cliche, it follows that formula perfectly. The idea of a fighter in a foreign land taking on a monolithic, sociopathic champion for no other reason than to avenge his crippled brother. What's not to like? The movie is an absolute blast to watch, and it's a sweet reminder of the fact that sometimes cliches are good. Coming in at number 11, we have the movie Elf from 2003. I reviewed this movie a while back, and as I pointed out then, this film is one of the funniest movies I've ever seen, and it is just an absolute joy to watch. A Christmas classic about a man raised in the North Pole by Santa Claus and his elves, who comes home to New York to find his dad. I almost don't know what else to say about it. that I didn't already cover in my review. It's just an absolutely hilarious movie. One of the best comedies ever made in my personal opinion. Coming in at number 10, we have another criminally underrated classic movie, Harry Brown from 2009, starring Michael Caine. This is a movie about an old, retired war veteran who has found himself living smack in the middle of a deprived, diverse, crime-ridden crap hole in the UK, where every single day of his life he's reminded of what an utter failed state his country has become, and what a waste of time and effort his military service was. Despite a life of military service, his country has become a borderline lost cause. When his wife dies, and his best friend is murdered by a local gang of chavs, he finally loses the plot, gets a bunch of guns, and goes on a rampage, wiping out the local scum of his community, and cleaning up the streets like a vigilante, which is based. Yeah, this movie is incredible. I love it. Fantastic movie. Coming in at number 9, we have another superhero film, Spider-Man 2. Need I say any more? This movie is an absolute blast. The first Spider-Man movie from 2002 was a certified masterpiece, and it was always going to be hard to replicate that. And in a way they did, by making a movie that was similar to the first, but also delved a little bit deeper into the inner conflicts and personal motivations of Peter Parker. It pretty accurately depicts what a person's life would be like if they had decided to forsake all their own personal desires and dreams to focus entirely on the responsibility of being a powerful superhero. It's a movie that has the perfect pacing for a movie of its kind. It has a really great protagonist who is just so relatable and understandable, yet extremely flawed and conflicted in his own way. The movie also has some of the best and most entertaining action scenes I've ever seen in a movie, and it also has one of the best villains in cinema in my personal opinion. It's also one of the few movies that's able to seamlessly blend action, comedy, drama, romance, and emotion, while being able to do all of them in a realistic and believable way, while being serious enough to get invested in, but not taking itself too serious, to the point where it at any point becomes tonally awkward. A true classic and a certified masterpiece of cinema. Coming in at number 8, we have the movie Hacksaw Ridge. So Hacksaw Ridge is a war movie based on the true story of the American World War II veteran medic and war hero Desmond Doss, who famously carried out a rescue mission during the Battle of Okinawa, where he reportedly saved the lives of about 50 to 100 or so men, saving people on both sides of the conflict. He was a devout Christian and a conscientious objector. According to the official story, he refused to carry a weapon, despite being punished for it by his comrades in the army, since his Christian faith made him unable to kill. And despite this, he did his duty on the battlefield and became a war hero. This movie is absolutely epic. Directed by Mel Gibson, who once again proves himself to be one of the greatest directors of all time. The movie has a lot of graphic, realistic violence, which I think may put a lot of people off it. But in a way it was necessary to accurately portray the absolute horrors of war, and show what it was that Desmond had to go through. It's a very well made movie, and it has some of the best action scenes of all time. A fantastic acting performance from Andrew Garfield, who gave the best performance of his career. And it's just a really fun, entertaining and inspiring movie to watch. Filmmaking at its best. Coming in at number 7, we have Lord of the Rings: The Return of the King. So I'm sure I don't need to tell you guys about how truly great the Lord of the Rings movie trilogy is. They're generally regarded as cinematic masterpieces. It's hard to really rank each one of them and say which ones should be higher on the list, since all three of them are certified masterpieces. But when thinking about it, it's clear to me that when it comes to how each movie was adapted from the books, there were a few minor things that I don't agree with in Return of the King as opposed to the other two. So the movie, while a genuine masterpiece, it makes it to number 7 on the list rather than higher. Coming in at number 6, we have Boyka Undisputed 4, which is the most recently released movie on the list. It came out in 2016. So this is probably the greatest action movie slash martial arts movie of all time. Not only does it have some of the best, if not the best action scenes I have ever seen in a movie, but it's a movie that is just so unique. And I'm really surprised that this movie came out when it did, because it's very old school in a good way. And it's a movie that for me ticks many boxes of what I would personally want from a movie. And I'd say that it's a movie that incorporates several of my own personal interests, such as combat sports and martial arts, as well as faith and spirituality, which makes this movie stand out to me, and it makes it stand out from your average generic action film. What's great too is the overall theme of the movie. It's a story about faith, redemption, and above all else, repentance. A story about one man's desperate struggle to save his own soul and seek forgiveness for his actions. And he does this by doing the only thing he knows how to do, fight. Scott Adkins gives a career best performance as his most popular character, Yuri Boyka, the badass Russian cage fighter, who actually started off as a villain of the series, the main villain of Undisputed 2. But the character became so popular and so memorable that he ended up taking over the franchise as the protagonist, and did so in a way that felt genuine and in no way forced or contrived. This movie truly is a classic, and in my personal opinion, it's the best movie in the entire franchise. And Undisputed is a pretty good franchise. At least it's my personal favourite. Coming in at number 5, Signs. This is a movie that a lot of people have seen, and a lot of people seem to like, but very few of them actually understand. It's a movie that at face value comes across as a generic, sci-fi, alien invasion type of movie, and in some ways it could even be interpreted as a pseudo-intellectual art film. But here's the thing, neither of these are true. And this film is actually a film about faith, or more specifically, one man and his family going through a crisis of faith. It stars Mel Gibson, who is of course a well-known Christian actor, and it's directed by M. Night Shyamalan. Interestingly enough, M. Night Shyamalan is one of these guys who is a director who specialises in making movies that are very meta in how they come across. Sometimes that works to his credit, like it did here. Most of the time it ends up as a complete disaster. But Signs, in my personal opinion, is M. Night's best movie. And like I said before, a movie about a family going through a crisis of faith and also having to deal with grief. It's a beautifully shot movie with some slight horror elements, but it's not a movie that relies on its horror for entertainment. The real entertainment and the real joy you get from this movie is seeing how the characters develop, how they interact with each other, and how they ultimately help to guide each other back to the right path and rediscover their faith together. A masterpiece. Coming in at number 4, we have Spider-Man from 2002. My personal favourite superhero movie, and also my personal favourite comic book movie of all time, as I've mentioned in the past. I pretty much repeat what I said about Spider-Man 2, the sequel to this. It has a lot of the same attributes, but this one is even better in my opinion, and it's even more well paced than the sequel. The movie is funny, it's well acted, well written, and just like the sequel, it has some incredible action scenes. It also has one of the best and most memorable villains in movie history, with Willem Dafoe giving a career best performance, and Tobey Maguire was perfect as Peter Parker, in my personal opinion. Best superhero movie ever made for me, I love it. Coming in at number 3 we have Lord of the Rings The Two Towers, which is of course the second movie in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Just like all the Lord of the Rings movies, it's a certified cinematic masterpiece. It has amazing action scenes, amazing set pieces, and it's an incredibly well-made adaptation of Tolkien's works. It does a lot of things better than the other movies in the series, in regards to its large-scale battle scenes, which are incredible and competently filmed. A fantastic movie by any standard. I almost don't know what else to say about it. It's a great movie, and a true classic. Coming in at number 2, we have Die Hard, which is perhaps the greatest Christmas movie ever made. And yes, it is a Christmas movie. I'm sure I don't need to tell you guys about Die Hard. It's one of the most popular and loved action movies of all time, I watch it pretty much every Christmas these days. Bruce Willis gives an amazing performance as a badass New York cop who gets caught up in a situation involving terrorists taking over a skyscraper, and he has to take them out one at a time while protecting hostages and collaborating with the police. And the movie's just an absolute blast to watch. Great acting, great dialogue, lots of comedy, and great action scenes. Alan Rickman also plays one of the best and most memorable villains of all time. And he and Bruce Willis were so great together in this movie. Great movie, a timeless classic, and I love it. And like I said before, it's one of the most popular action movies of all time, and for good reason. It's a blast to watch. And finally, of course, coming in at number 1, we have The Post, starring Tom Hanks and Meryl Streep. Without a shadow of a doubt, the most entertaining, enigmatic, and enthralling movie of all time. A non-stop barrage of excitement and innovation. A cinematic masterpiece of epic proportions. The kind of movie that has you glued to the screen for the entire duration of the runtime. I'm kidding, obviously. Coming in at number 1, Lord of the Rings: The Fellowship of the Ring. What else can I say? The movie really speaks for itself, doesn't it? I will never forget the first time I saw it in cinema. Probably the most engaging and entertained I've ever been from a movie. This is a classic example of what I'm talking about when I talk about movies that make you feel something. Movies that draw you in with a sense of wonder and adventure. And a movie that succeeds on pretty much every level that I can think of in regards to overall filmmaking. This is a movie that every time I watch it, it feels like more than just watching a film. It feels like an event to me, like I am literally embarking on an adventure of my own. Yeah, in case you can't tell, I really love this movie, and I almost don't know what else to say about it. The set pieces, the soundtrack, the writing, the action scenes, the cinematography, and the overall themes and general atmosphere of the movie is so unique. My personal favourite movie of all time. So yeah, those are my top 20 personal favourite movies of all time. I would love to read your list in the comments section. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching and God bless.